Alright, can I ask something real quick? Am I the only one who's starting to get a little tired of this half-assed DLC's behavior keeps putting out? Like, seriously, every time a new chapter is about to drop, they hype it up like crazy across all their socials. We get absolutely flooded with all sorts of riddles, puzzles, Easter eggs, teasers, trailers, and all that other marketing crap. At some point, you start buying into that hype, and before you know it, you're already waiting for that DLC like it's your f***ing paycheck. But then it actually drops, and what you get is... yeah. It's just one single character and they don't even have a map. I don't know about you, but I have a very big issue with that, because whenever that happens, I feel like I'm getting scammed. Like, behavior's trying to sell me something unfinished. I mean, a chapter is supposed to be something huge, a milestone for the game. The word itself implies that, but a single character feels nothing like that. Honestly, it's such a nothing burger, it barely qualifies as a fart in the wind, and unfortunately, that's exactly what happened with the Jason chapter. Also with the Life Road chapter, but nobody cares about survivors, so Jason chapter. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the killer himself turned out bad. He seems alright, certainly better than a lot of people were afraid he would be. Yeah, you can nitpick a few things, for example how his power doesn't reflect some of the really obvious things from the movies, like the water theme or his mother being the original killer in part 1. Also the way he holds his arms really high when his walking looks so mega stupid. It's like he's trying to flex his weapons to the survivors or something. But overall, there's nothing worth molding about. But even if he was absolutely perfect in every way imaginable, it still doesn't justify him being the only thing the chapter offers. If we don't count the skins for him, obviously, because of course there have to be skins. Behavior can forget about anything, but even the second coming won't stop them from selling you a new batch of skins. Remember when they used to call single character DLCs paragraphs? Yeah, I think for cases like Jason's we might need a more accurate term, like a sentence DLC. But seriously, it's f***ing ridiculous how they handled this chapter. I mean, think about it for a second. Jason is hands down the most requested killer in the entire history of the game. People have been begging the devs to add him ever since Friday the 13th died. But as far as I know, during all these years, the franchise has been in legal hell, so no one could release new content based on it. Finally, Behavior manages to come to an agreement with the rights holder and gets an opportunity to expand their killer roster with one of the most iconic villains from the 80s slasher movies. Big news, everybody's literally shitting their pants expecting something absolutely unreal, and what do we get? This? Seriously? This is how you're gonna use Jason motherfucking Voorhees? And that's not even to mention the fact that you tied this chapter to the game's 10-year anniversary. 10-year! Some mid-chapter updates from years ago had more meat in them than this. And by the way, it's not like the franchise lore is so limited it's hard to find something there that would allow you to expand the chapter. It has more than 10 movies in it, with multiple characters that could make a great survivor. In fact, one of them, namely Tommy Jarvis, is such an obvious pick, he's literally writing himself into the chapter. And don't even get me started on the map. The moment Jason was announced, I didn't have a single doubt we would get Camp Crystal Lake as the map. Like, come on, imagine how cool that would be. A summer camp location with a split layout, one part inside the cabins and another one near the lake. We've never had a single water-themed map in the game before, and it was such a perfect opportunity to fix that. Yet the devs didn't even try. And you know what else I've noticed? It's usually the paid DLCs that don't get an associated map. I mean, look for yourself. Out of 19 licensed killers, 10 don't have a map of their own. And that's just so convenient, don't you think? Whenever a big IP is involved, the devs suddenly don't feel like they need to try. It's almost like they think the big name is gonna be enough to sell the DLC, so why go the extra mile, right, Behavior? The importance of having a new map in a DLC is honestly hard to overstate. Without it, it's very easy to end up in situations where players don't even realize the game got an update at all. Like, imagine a new DLC drops without a map, but the title character or characters turn out to be so trash nobody wants to play them. At that point, the only way you'd even know something changed since the last patch is by reading the patch notes, because if you actually play the game, everything just looks exactly the same. Same old killers, same old survivors, and sometimes even same old perks. But when there is a new map, the game will naturally throw you into it from time to time, and you'll still get to dive into the atmosphere of the new chapter. Sure, it's not gonna be the full experience the devs meant originally, but that's still better than nothing. The perfect example of that is the Houndmaster. Remember when she first came out? Yeah, me neither. Everything about her, from the design to the ability, sucked such major balls she fell into oblivion before the PTB was even over. So at release, the only thing that even reminded people she existed was her themed lobby. Speaking of which, whenever we get a themed lobby without an actual map, it's so fucking confusing, because if you really think about it, a lobby is what, like 15% of a map? It's a fully modeled 3D location with a distinct concept, unique textures, and sometimes even full structures that could easily serve as the main building or any other landmark building. At that point, all you really need to do to turn it into a map is add a bit more space, throw in a couple of additional unique structures, and fill the rest with generic loopable tiles. Okay, if you really want to impress people, you could go the extra mile and add a few hidden Easter eggs or some fun little gimmick mechanics, like that freezing trap on Nostromo. But quite often, the devs just don't commit to that, so the lobby ends up being the only thing we get. And it's super fucking annoying, because instead of being a cool feature that gets you in the mood for the chapter, all it does is tease you for no reason. It's like, look guys, this is what the new map could have been, but the devs are too lazy, so fuck you. Now, think about how many insane opportunities Behavior has wasted this way. Let's go back to the Houndmaster. If I'm not mistaken, she's supposed to be a pirate. Looks nothing like one if you ask me, but hey, whatever you say, Behavior. Anyway, just imagine how sick it would be to have a pirate-themed map. It would easily be one of the most unique maps in the game. Or take Dracula. Have you ever played a single Castlevania game? Have you seen those locations? They're fucking awesome. Big, spacious areas just oozing gothic aesthetics. As a long-standing fan of this franchise, I'd fucking shit myself if Behavior actually introduced something like that. But no, instead all we get is a castle model that loads in the background whenever Dracula is the killer. I guess it's supposed to be this big wow moment that shows Behavior's effort, but I don't know, I think it's just lame, because most of the time it ends up looking completely out of place. I mean, a castle on the far map? That's way too surreal, even for DBD. An actual Castlevania map would fit DBD like no other. In the original games, the castle is powered by some sort of chaotic energy that makes it constantly change its layout. And that goes perfectly with Behavior's RNG-based approach to maps. We could even go further back. Remember when Ghostface came out? More specifically, his trailer? He walks into a store, buys a knife, and attacks the cashier. Do you remember what that store looked like? Like, tell me it wouldn't be perfect as a map. These shelves with goods are just asking to be loops. It would also be the first map in the history of the game where the existence of pallets would actually be justified. But unfortunately, Behavior doesn't give a fuck, so all these killers and many others are basically just bombs without a home map. With some chapters, things get really weird. Like, you can't say the devs didn't put any effort, but the problem is that the effort clearly went in the wrong direction. Sometimes a chapter does have a new map, but thematically it has nothing to do with anything. It's kinda just there because for some reason the devs decided now was the perfect time to release it. That's how we got Green Pantry, Dead Sands, and Norman Lake Mine. They came out with Baba, Ghoul, and Houndmaster respectively, and that's just f***ing stupid. Look, I don't really mind these maps being in the game, especially the new Warmond. It doesn't play the best when you're on Killer, but visually is just awesome. Gives me Carpenter's The Thing kind of vibes. But if you're putting in the effort to make a map, wouldn't it make more sense to create a unique one that actually fits the chapter's theme and leave these random maps for some mid-chapter updates? I mean, that's just so obvious, no? It seems like recently the devs realized how dirty they did some of the killers because they started retroactively giving some of them associated maps. Well, so far it only happened to one killer, the Trickster, but I like to pretend that this is a trend. When several months ago they reworked the Trickster for like the 27th time, they also added the Trickster's Delusion map, a neon urban location with Asian aesthetic that's been asking to be his home map ever since release. And holy shit did it turn out good. So far it's probably one of the most detailed and best looking maps in the game. I swear, you could walk around for like half an hour and still find something new to look at. Yes, it ended up being pretty broken, because windows there are diabolically safe. Plus it's a semi-closed map, which makes it really bad for a big portion of the killer roster, like my favorite Hillbilly. But it's not like these issues are impossible to fix, so I still see it as a W. Anyway, this raises a question. If they're still adding maps for old characters years later, why not just do it from the start? Why deliberately mess up the release of your DLCs and wait until everyone and their grandma has lost all interest in them? What's the issue here exactly? Manpower? Budget? Both? If it really comes down to that and not just plain project mismanagement, then we're lucky. Because as you're watching this video, Behavior is working on a tool that can help them leave all these issues behind and make the process of creating new maps much faster and cheaper, even though they might not realize it yet. You see, during the 10-year anniversary stream, they announced that in 2027, mod support is officially coming to the game. Yes, after years of fighting against community-made content, they finally decided to embrace it, and honestly, that's huge. This might actually be one of the biggest moments in the game's entire history, bigger than any licensed chapter we've ever had or will ever have, because this has the potential to keep the game relevant forever. Just look at Left 4 Dead 2. The game is pushing 20 years, but thanks to an active modding community, it's still alive and kicking, with tens of thousands of people playing it every day. Now, we don't know exactly how far the devs are gonna go with this and how much freedom they'll actually give to modders. Probably not too much. A lot of you might not remember it, but last time BHVR let modders run completely unchecked, it led to a cheating pandemic, with people running bright neon skins on trappers' traps and other important gameplay elements to make sure they stand out in any environment. But according to the devs themselves, there's gonna be enough freedom to create things like custom maps.
Naturally, there will be some rules and restrictions to follow that we will share details on soon, but we cannot wait to see you create new maps, new modes, and everything in between that you will create for each other.
And this is where things get interesting. If the quality of these maps is high enough and they don't play like some amateur slob, BHVR could reach out to their creators, pay them for the work, and then officially introduce them to the game, either as standalone maps or, if they fit thematically, as dedicated maps for killers that don't yet have one. So basically, instead of spending internal resources on creating the missing maps themselves, they could commission members of their own community to do it for them. That would take a lot of pressure off their team and let them redirect those resources into other important things, like new events or modifiers. Now, some people might say that modders would never go as far as creating entire custom maps. It's just too complicated for a single person who isn't a professional. Just look at DBD mods from the past. Most of them are cosmetic, either custom skins or recolors of the existing skins. However, there are still some people who put out genuinely high-quality work, including custom maps. In fact, several custom maps for DBD already exist. They were created years ago for the original private server by a modder who goes by the nickname Hasno. They made 2 fully playable maps and also teased a third one that was never released. And let me tell you something, these maps were pure fucking gold. They were so good, you could drop them into the game right now and nobody would even be able to tell they weren't made by BHVR. So yeah, community-made maps are very much possible. BHVR just needs to loosen the reins on modding a bit and finally give the community a chance to prove themselves. Adding community-created content isn't some revolutionary idea. Other companies have already done this before. For example, Valve. Back in 2011, a modder known as Two Evil Eyes created a custom campaign for Left 4 Dead 2 called Coldstream. It received a lot of positive feedback from players. Impressed by its quality, Valve stepped in to help polish it and eventually released it as an official DLC. So I don't see what would be stopping BHVR from doing the same exact thing if they actually wanted to. Moreover, they kind of already did that in the past. If you take one of Hasno's custom maps called Red District, you will notice that it's surprisingly similar to BHVR's Trickster's Delusion. Both have Asian style, both consist of multiple little streets and stores, both have neon lighting, both have Trickster's portraits scattered around, and both play his theme music in certain parts of the map. I'm not saying the devs straight up copied Hasno's map, not at all. Their map has a completely different layout, but at the same time it's clear as day they took a lot of inspiration from Hasno. I mean, come on, they literally called the new realm for their map Sleepless District. Red District, Sleepless District. I don't think they could possibly make it any more obvious. With this move, they've essentially laid the groundwork for officially bringing community-made content into their game. So even if they start doing it tomorrow, I don't think too many people would find it strange. Honestly, they could even build entire events around this. For example, they could run competitions for the best home map for some killers. Modders would submit their work through something like Steam Workshop, where people would playtest them, vote for their favorites, and in the end, the map with the most votes would get officially added to the game. It's such an obvious PR move that I'm genuinely surprised the devs haven't thought of it earlier. This would massively boost their reputation among players. People would start seeing them as f***ing saints who are not just in tune with their community, but actually collaborating with them. It's entirely possible that BHVR doesn't plan to integrate modding that deeply into the game. It might just end up being a fun side thing that exists alongside the main version of the game without ever crossing over with it. But honestly, even if that's the case, I'll take it. Official or not, we will be getting more maps, and that makes me feel optimistic about the game for the first time in a while.